And obviously there is some other way. However, this is not so simple anymore as we had this before, because what we obviously actually have to modify are those elements inside here, the real elements. So if you want to change the color of your dragger, you have to basically manipulate this element. If you want to get some background for your range, you have to manipulate this element. But as you see in the inspector here, those things are grayed out and we cannot actually manipulate them. But what we can do is we can add style sheets and styling rules for them, because those things will then later be attached to this internal hierarchy, and this should work just as before. And now, before we actually start styling this particular slider, I would just like to show you the two ways, or the ways that you actually have to interact with this thing, and how you can actually set those stylings. And for that, we will introduce one new thing that is very helpful, and this is called the UI Toolkit Debugger, I think. It's just called Debugger, but you can find it here under, when you go on the Window, UI Toolkit, and then Debugger. This opens a not very telling, mysterious window that is actually quite useful when you have to do stuff like that, when you have to style some of the controls, some of the built-in controls, and actually see what their internal hierarchy is once you attach it to a game view. This is not the simplest tool to use, however. It is a little bit confusing in the beginning, because in theory you could also use this on your UI builder here. But for this version, at least for now, maybe they will fix this or change this a little bit. You can see when I select the builder here, what I'm actually getting is not my canvas as I would maybe like to have it. Now let's just attach the debugger to this inspector. Maybe that's a little bit easier then. But you can see when I choose the builder here, what I actually get is my whole the whole UI builder thing. So you not only get your canvas, but you get all those windows and all the elements, because the UI builder is actually also built in that way. So you can build all those windows when you want to do editor scripting, just like you have them in UI Builder. You could basically recreate all those windows yourself. But that's the downside for the debugger, that here when we choose the builder, we have way too much information to actually debug our canvas. Now, technically, you could kind of go into this hierarchy and choose your canvas here and then only work on your canvas. But I think, in my experience, a better way to actually do it is to do this through your game view, because what you can see is once we go into play mode, we are now actually able to choose our panel asset here. Now, we didn't name this, that's why it has this new panel settings name. But now when we select this, only our actual canvas is selected, and we can only debug the elements that are in here. And that's a more focused way, I think, and a more precise way to actually debug this. And here you can see we are having some sort of container, some sort of root element, and then we are actually having, this is the first visual element that we actually added. Now this is corresponding to this visual element here, as you can see. And inside there, we are actually having our slider. And now we can expand this, just as we said before. Once you actually attach your slider to a real canvas, to a real game view, this is this hierarchy, this internal hierarchy is actually created. And now we can see we are sort of having real elements here, and we can see all of their IDs and particularly all of their USS classes. So if you want to find out, for example, what class is my dragger, for example, having here, you can just go into this debugger and just check, okay, this is the class that it has. And you can actually go much deeper here, you can see all sorts of things like this sort of display will be also familiar for people who work with HTML and debugging in your web projects. You have something that is basically the same thing, showing your padding and your margins. And then you can see a lot of information about this element, like its layout properties, its world bound, and also the properties that are actually set on this particular class. Like, I don't know, the color, your font size, whatever you would do, you can inspect all those things, and you can actually change some of them live here. So whenever you really want to find out if everything kind of worked out with your layout, if the classes that you expected were actually attached, if the styling that you expected was actually attached, for example, if you had some conflicting styles, you can see here which style sort of won and stuff like that. You can see all the classes that are attached to this element. You can also see them here in this overview, but if there are multiple classes, this gets a little bit this is not super orderly and you cannot really see them. But this is generally super useful for debugging your UI elements if you're not sure what is actually happening. So I just wanted to show you this. We will not use this super often because like I prepared most of those projects, and so I know that they are basically working and we don't need to debug them. But I use this quite a lot of times, like through production and while doing this stuff, and every time when I thought something is not working as I expected it, I could just open the debugger, find the element, and see what is actually going on. So let's now just make this a bit smaller again. Let's stop the play mode and let's go back to our UI builder.